Hey everyone, in this video I'll be showing you two overpowered fire damage builds in Palworld's 1.0 update. And you're seeing that right, we're actually going against a water type pal here, and we're changing its type to grass basically, and dealing that double damage. So I'll be breaking down everything that you need to know about this build. Or I should say two builds, because I'm going to show you a burn version of this and the one that's making them weak to the damage type here. And we're changing our damage type into fire, which is doing some pretty crazy damage. And you can see there I got the Ari hat. We're in the hard mode of this. So how this works is there are 3 mounts in the game, that is or I guess 2 mounts and 1 pal that lets us change our damage type to fire, and it'll increase damage by 20%, basically giving us the same type attack bonus in this game. Now this is Chillit and Ragnarok. We can also throw in Wixen, who has an ability to change our damage to fire and boost it by 50%. I like Ragnarok because he can fly, but Chillit is also a really good choice here. Now this becomes really powerful when we use the Needle Knocked here. So this will apply Ivy covered 6, and whenever we have this on the enemy, we can then use the regular needle, which makes targets that have the affliction Ivy covered will take 65% more damage. So not only we're dealing double damage because Ivy cover changed them to like a grass type, but not only does it apply a double damage to the fire type, it also slows the enemy down. Whenever you see those vines around the target, they're getting slowed and taking double damage from our Ragnarok here. Now, you can also throw in Sylvance here. Now, well, in their party, whenever you attack a target that has Ivy covered, it's going to deal damage equal to 60% of the player's attack damage. This does have a cooldown, so if you're using things like the drone launcher or like the combat SMG, it's going to be a little bit less effective. However, if you're using the mechanical bow only, this destroys, and it's a pretty cool explosion to have that happen. But this is more so for like if you're fighting multiple targets at a time. And then we got Van Worm Christ here, who I think looks really cool, but gives enemy weak point an additional 50% damage. So with this, I like to have the Vanguard passive skill on all these. These will boost up your damage by 10% each. So that's a 50% damage boost, a 20% damage boost here, a 65% damage boost here. We're also getting an additional 60% of that damage, a 50% damage boost, and it's dealing double damage. So yeah, this works great together, but I'll also show you another setup because there's multiple ways that we can do this. So for the second build, this is a burn damage focus. I don't think it's as strong, but it's a fun choice if you want to play with it. So again, Ragnarok, Chillit, or Renji, I guess either of these here, or Wixen, but one of these 3 is going to be the fire booster attacker. We're going to throw in Renjishi here, which applies burn and whenever we attack a target, which is great because we can then throw in Yormantide Ignis, which will increase that damage by 65%, and we nullify lava damage. Now there are a couple others here we can throw on. We got Magix here, which I think is a really cool pal design, but with this one, while it's in your party, player attacks will, when they're afflicted with burn, will create flames around itself, dealing continuous damage equal to 30% of the player's attack damage to enemies that come in contact with them. It can also trigger that ability itself too, which is pretty nice. Now we can also throw on Tharacle here, which has a similar effect to Sylvance here, where if the target has burn, it's going to make them explode, dealing damage equal to 60% of the player attack damage. Again, if we're running this particular setup here, you don't want to use the drone launcher, you want to use the mechanical bow so that you can do some pretty crazy damage, but you can first start off with like the combat SMG to apply burn on them, and then you get all the damage boosts here. But as mentioned, it's better to go with the grass team, oddly enough, on your fire team to get way more damage out of it. But those are the 2 build variations you can go with. You can also sub out, like if you don't want Tharacle, you can throw in your Van Worm Christ or Cryolink's Terra, which will similar effect. This one gives you 50% extra critical damage. This gives you 60% after you attack a critical hit spot. It is a little bit finicky, so that's why I oftentimes will opt for Van Worm Christ, but both of these work fantastic together. I just like to roll with this party here. Now, if you do want to use the drone launcher, you don't want to take on Sylvance, so you can take them out of your party. Some good alternatives. You can actually throw on Venusa here for the blind effect. This would be more so, I guess you'd have to remove them as well, and throw in Rouge to also get the additional damage on blinded targets. You can pull them out and also have Prickster because they'll apply poison damage. They're really fun to play with, so I like to go with that as well. One of my favorite pals in the entire game, Dupin. Such a cool pal. Unfortunately, its ability is not super amazing, but what it has is when it's in your party player, if the player's health falls below 50%, Dupin generates an explosion. It does burn buildup. That's cool. However, burn doesn't really do a crazy amount of damage, so not worth it really. Additionally, while the player's health is below 50%, the player's attack is increased by 50. This part of here is nice. So if you want to go with the full fire theme, Dupin is a really cool pal with lots of great animations, but they're also really great at the base because they have 4 very important skills. Another fire pal, if you want to focus on pal damage instead, is have Knock Them Ignis here, who has the highest possible fire damage. What their ability does is basically a 210% increase to their attack power when you activate it, so they have the highest possible attack for a fire pal. It is nuts. I'll quickly mention Gobfin Ignis as well, which gives you a player attack bonus of 220% there, which can be nice. And if you need some survivability, you can take a Felbat or Lavander here, as they give you lifesteal. And I guess one last recommendation, or two more recommendations. Xenoguard, increase your energy weapon damage by 35%, so you can slot them in over Sylvans. Or if you want to go with the full bow setup, Lumen, Robin Quill, and Robin Quill Terror, like the bow goats. And for a more defensive focused one, Sylvagus is really good here. This is actually a pretty solid option because it is the damage that we take for our shield, which is really nice because this gives us some survivability. And I guess last one, Solen is just hard to beat. I know people don't love to see Solen on builds, but if you throw Solen on there, that's an 80% boost to our attack. So yeah, this comes together really nicely with doubling our damage, applying a status, 65% damage boost, 50% damage boost, 80% damage boost, and 20% damage boost. It's nuts. Now for our items and accessories, Dogen gives us an attack boost as well as our pals 20%, really useful to have. I also like to have the attack pennant for another 15% attack boost. This can get our attack going up pretty high here. We got it at 641 at the current moment, 120% pal effect increase. Our equipment is given a 47%. Now the multi-climate undershirt is important. If you want to ride on Ragnarok's back, they're a hot bird, so you're going to burn yourself up unless you have this equipped, so I highly recommend grabbing this, although not super necessary if you want to use like Chillet or Wixen for example. I also like to have the triple jump boot, just personal preference, not really the most optimal route. You'd probably be better off going with something like the Flame Emperor's Baton here, and you can even just throw on like the Flame Emperor's Baton. You can throw in another baton, which is funny enough because it'll boost up the pal's attack damage even further. So that can be a choice if you want to go that route for more pal damage. And for the best weapons for the setup, now the drone launcher here, as well as the Terra Prisma, these again will trigger any of those abilities that trigger and have a cooldown. So don't love having these if you're doing more of like an arrow focus build, because that's going to give you those big booms that you want. But if you're going to go with the drone launcher, you're not going to going with the party, you'll go with a setup like this. So we would actually go with like the combat SMG. I like the beam scatter and the mechanical ball. These would be like the best choices in the late game. I also personally like to have the wing pack. This lets you use Wixen and have the highest possible damage with a 50% boost instead. But when it comes to weapons, personal preference works too. Like the laser sword is another really powerful option. I think it fits thematically with the red. And to further increase your attack power, a Mazzarina cheeseburger here will give a big 20% damage boost. So they are really worth grabbing too. So again, against the Ari and Xiaolong fight here, the thing is, this is a water more damage, but the Ragnarok to fly around. We're actually torching him. Yeah, on the hard difficulty. Sometimes you do get lucky with damage there. We got a lot of headshots off, and that's I guess the boost from Solen as well with the cheeseburgers. Damage Solen is required in all builds. I tried not to. She is really. The hug you so much, hug me. Please, knocked is super great, amazing. All this together lets you just interaction. We'll have constant comments. Hit the subscribe if you enjoyed. We'll catch you in the next one.